All of you, my dear friend, far and close and nearby and on the other side of the continent, Chag Sameach, Chag Urim Sameach. I'm really so happy and privileged, my dear friend Audrey, Rabbi Cantor. If I have my own synagogue, I can hire you as my cantor, but I don't have a synagogue anymore, so I represent myself. My dear friends, you will hear Maus Tzur many times, and you will hear also some facts that you may not know. But before I begin, I want to tell you that in the 18th century, Chaim Luzzatto said in his Mesilat Yesharim, The Path of the Righteous, he said, everything that I'm saying here is nothing new. It's a matter of fact, and it's known, but you have to remind people about it. I mean, I paraphrase, not his Hebrew probably was much better than mine. So a lot of it is self-evident. Some people are more familiar with what I will talk, and some people will be less familiar. So let me share the screen. I will first talk about the musical history and development of the brachot, what we heard now by Rabbi Audrey. We think it's traditional. It was maybe as early as the 20th century, but I have documents from the 18th and 19th century of the way it was notated. So I will have the screen, and I will sing for you some of the notations on the screen too, until we get to the version that is today. Then, of course, Maus Tzur are always shock people by saying that it's not a Jewish hymn and not Jewish melody, but we'll get to it later. So let me just share the screen and begin, and we'll hold our questions for the end. Now, why I don't see the screen?
Benny, you shared your screen and not the presentation. You have to unshare and start sharing the presentation, not the screen.
I did. 1 second. Aha. Okay, let me just make sure that I can see the panel.
We can see it fine on Zoom.
Okay, very beautiful. Very beautiful. Thank you. Hanukkah, brachot, and the Maus Tzur. So here we begin. There'll be a lot of music and a lot of talking. Just to show you that once upon a time, I was an accomplished violinist, and I just picked up the violin again and the viola, since I retired after 41 years from one particular synagogue. But let's begin. Doug, can you take off this admit, everything that I see admit here? Okay. So, the first time that we are familiar with the blessings, the way it was notated by Samuel Namberg, who lived between 1817 and 1880. And I have a whole history about Namberg himself, but only a little bit to say that he was born in Bavaria and descended of almost 10 generations of South German Chazanim. Namberg received his musical education at Munich and sang in synagogue choir. In 1843 and 1845, he was appointed the first chazan at the synagogue in the Roi Notre Dame in Paris, under the sponsorship of Jacques Halevi, who is a very famous Jewish composer who actually wrote the opera La Juive. But Namberg has an incredible collection on his volumes that he published in 1874. He brought out a collection of traditional synagogue melody, Agudat Shirim. In 1877, Namberg published the first modern edition of Salomone Rossi, the composer of the Renaissance. There's much more about him, but I printed out the page. I'm going to show you how the first notation sounds a little different than what we sing today. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Baruch atah Adonai Elohei she'asa nisim לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. שהחיינו is Baruch atah Adonai, and so forth and so fast. And I'm walking again. Baal Tfilah, the Baal Tfilah Avraham Ber, 1834 to 1894. Avraham Ber was born in Poland, and he was worked as a cantor and teacher in several communities throughout Western Prussia before settling as a cantor in Gothenburg Synagogue in Sweden in 1857. He published a lot of books and a lot of incredible material, but his magnum opus is the Baal Tfilah, and it is all here. Just explaining to you that the Baal Tfilah was one of the most important volumes of cantorial teaching material until our day, because he has in this Baal Tfilah a version, and you will see in a minute how I'll go to the notation. You see Weise 1, Weise 2, and the bottom Weise 3. He notated the Western European, the Eastern European, and also the Sephardic version of the blessing. I'm going a little faster because I want to get to the music. I just want you to hear a little bit of how the blessings were different and how they came down to us. So, in the Brachot LeChanukkah, in his companion for the four-beter, the Baal Tfilah, it is a very important book that is being taught in Jewish College in London, in the HSC and the JTS. And here's a blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Hanukkah. But if you look at the second version, in the 2W means the zweite Weise, the second version, it is an East European, and you hear a little bit more of Chazanut. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Hanukkah. But the more important version is on the second one, the bottom note. Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'adlik ner shel Hanukkah. And then shehecheyanu. לא שכנה, sorry. שעשה ניסים לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. And of course, in the next one, the Shehecheyanu, the third one, is Sephardim sing that even today, Baruch atah Adonai, and so on and so forth. We continue. Now is another one. Fabian, around 1845, passed away in 1922. Fabian was trained by a Russian cantor and worked in that Koshmin from 1875 to 1877. In 1885, he came to Frankfurt the Main, and there he collected primarily the tradition of the southern German Bavaria, and of course many notes about what he published and what he accomplished, but he basically notated a lot of the southern German tradition. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו להדליק נר של חנוכה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשה ניסים לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. And so I had to learn these things because it confuses me with the way that we're singing it these days. But we are now getting to our own times, and Rabbi Israel Goldfarb, also a cantor born in Galicia, now Poland, of course, immigrated to the United States in 1893. He graduated from Columbia University and attended the Institute of Musical Arts, which is now the Juilliard School, as well as a Jewish Theological Seminary, where he later served as a faculty for more than 20 years as an instructor of biblical cantillation of the trop. But Goldfarb is best remembered for his many contributions in songbooks for synagogue music, especially with regards to compiling as well as creating congregational melody. There's so many melodies that we know that we assume that they are so traditional, but I know that the one on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, at the end of the Kedusha, Yimloch Adonai le'olam Elohai Zion, or comes to mind now V'shamru and Shabbat, V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, and of course very, very traditional. And so his notation is the very basic, the way we sing it now. I will sing just one verse. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Hanukkah. But look the way this chassid is singing it.
The Hanukkah Blessings. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Hanukkah.
And here is the same thing with the accompaniment. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kiyemanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. And this shehecheyanu became the public domain because we sing at synagogues many times for Shehecheyanu, for an ofruf, or for a bar mitzvah. This is the Shehecheyanu that has been sung. Now come to the very important and very personal. Chazan Shlomo Ravitz lived between 1871 and 1980. So in the 60s and the 50s, when I was still a child, he was already in his 70s and 80s. He had a strength like unbelievable. Ravitz himself established an entire generation of chazanim and baalei tefillah. His fame was that he actually also served as a chazan in Johannesburg, and he immigrated to Palestine, to Eretz Israel in 1932, to the Ohel Shem synagogue in Tel Aviv, where Nachman Chaim Bialik asked him to arrange a shalosh seudot and a mincha on a Saturday afternoon. Now, I was in a Bilu school, in a minute you will see this, with a children's choir, but I lived very far. I lived in North Tel Aviv, and my parents wouldn't let me walk all the way to where Ohel Shem was in South Tel Aviv. But he was also the creator of the synagogue Bilu choir, which I was singing. In a minute, I will show you. I'm running first to his notation, but I want to show you something. This is Benny Meissner at the age of 13 in the main auditorium on a platform on a balcony, looking out to what today is the parking lot, which at that time was only gravel. There were 3,000 children from schools with torches. And of course, the article, I can show you here, it says, הילד בן 13, בנימין מייזנר, תלמיד בית ספר בילו, the student in the Bילו school. And then when I looked at these notations, because he published many books of Nusach and Tfilot, that I remember when I started to sing it, is that's the way I sang on that balcony. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav vetzivanu leadlik ner shel Hanukkah. It doesn't go down Hanukkah. Why? Because the anticipation for the next blessing. Baruch atah, a little bit of chazanut for children. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, which is a very distinguished mode of celebration. We call it the Adonai Malach mode. Eloheinu melech haolam, שעשה ניסים לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. And again, it doesn't go down to the bottom tone because in the traditional liturgy, you go right into Hanerot halalu. So, בזמן הזה Hanerot halalu. And then you'll see it on this page altogether. Now, we continue a little bit, and very soon we'll finish, and I will entertain you with a very beautiful rendition, which doesn't sound anything like you just heard until now. Edelson, again, was a very famous musicologist, maybe the father of modern musicology. Jewish ethnomusicologist, composer, comprehensive studies of Jewish music. He wrote a book of Jewish music that all the students are studying. He became a teacher in Cincinnati at the Hebrew Union College, and he died in South Africa because he went to South Africa. This suggestion in one of his studies is common origin of musical phrases that went back to Israel, Palestine, all the way to the 1st century. So he detected a lot of motifs which are very antiquated, and he also wrote a thesaurus of hundreds and hundreds of melodies which are comparing synagogue music all the way to antiquity. Of course, a lot of it is in the Middle East, but the way he notated this brachot for Hanukkah sound like this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav vetzivanu leadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, and so forth. I'm just showing you that there is more than one version to the way the Hanukkah blessing was. I'm skipping one and coming to something very interesting. Ephraim Dizahav, by the way, I wanted to say at the beginning, all these documents and factual material I received from a very dear friend of mine, a mentor and a teacher of mine, Eliyahu Schleifer, Professor Schleifer, and a great musicologist who researched a lot of Jewish music in different genres. And he gave me this particular one, especially because this Ephraim Dizahav, if you see on the right lab, used to sing it in Kol Yerushalayim, which was before Kol Israel, before the broadcast of Israel. And he insisted that he wanted to make sure that this version will become the official version in Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav vetzivanu leadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שעשה ניסים לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. Of course, the last one I leave for a second because Eli Schleifer says in his research that he took probably from the one that we sing now, Goldfarb, but the last one is more of Chazanut, of East European cantorial scales. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. You would notice that all these blessings are in the major key. And this is around 1950s, the way this musicologist Eli Schleifer notated this, the way the Israeli version is now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Because in Israel, of course, they speak Hebrew and they put the right pronunciation and the right accent in the right place. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sheyasa nisim la'avotenu bayamim hahem. Hahem is already a half note, and if you see 5/4, it is not as rhythmic as the rest of them. B'hazman hazeh. Listen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, without the words ta 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 שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. I just want to give you the incredible differences, the little nuances between the between the different versions. We'll skip this one and we'll go to something here which I will not talk, but you listen how they're doing it in Basel. A very beautiful rendition. It's a version, of course, that is much influenced on Western European, of Vienna and Berlin, which are the great two incredible figureheads of modern Jewish music in the Ashkenazic world, mainly Solomon Sulzer, who is the chief cantor in Vienna, who was very close to Schubert and to Franz Josef, and in Berlin, of course, in the big synagogue, was Louis Lewandowski, which you people know, and all over the world we know many melodies which are public domain. Even Orthodox people don't know that most of what they sing in the synagogue comes from a Reform organist in a Reform synagogue in Berlin. Okay, I just went quickly through the blessing, and now we come to the Maoz Tzur. So, there's a lot of things to say about Maoz Tzur. I want to talk a little bit about Maoz Tzur while you read this thing, because it's a synopsis of what we have here. The hymn is, of course, Maoz Tzur Yeshuati. It's thought to have been written in the 13th century during the Crusades. The first letters or the first 5 stanzas form an acrostic of the composer's name, Mordechai. You will see it in a minute. By the way, the first time I heard this Eli Schleifer speak about the Maoz Tzur, I was shocked, because in reality, the Maoz Tzur has nothing to do with Hanukkah. The 6th verse has one word, Yevanim, the Greek. The rest of it, you'll see in a minute what Maoz Tzur is all about. And of course, in the last verse, there's also acrostics of Mordechai, who is known to be Mordechai ben Yitzchak Halevi, who wrote also the Shabbat table hymn Mayafit. Even the scholars refer to in the Talmud to this song, the closing verse, Mordechai, or maybe it was Mordechai whose father-in-law was murdered in Mayence, Germany in 1069, and it's a debate. The hymn tells the history in a poetic form and celebrates the deliverance from 4 ancient enemies, Pharaoh, Nebuchadnezzar, Haman, and Antiochus. And I will dwell on it in a minute, because there's so much to talk about it that I want to get too much to the music. So the first, before we go to the actual analysis of the thing itself, I want you to hear one of the nice versions of Maoz Tzur, just to give me a break from talking. And on YouTube, there's so many of these things. I like this, and then more surprises later.
Hey everybody, this is Maoz Tzur. Happy Hanukkah. Maoz Tzur Yeshuati Lecha na'el shabeach Tikon betefilati V'sham toda nezabeach Letachin matbeach Mitzor hamnabeach Azegmor beshir mizmor Hanukkah tamizbeach Azegmor beshir mizmor Hanukkah tamizbeach.
Okay, give us a little rest. The first verse, it's a beautiful kind of jazzy, modern interpretation. There are many more of those beautiful things that you will enjoy and be entertained. The first and the last stanzas are written in the present tense. The first expresses the hope of rebuilding of the temple and for the defeat of the enemies, who are metaphorically referred to as barking, hamenabeach. When a dog barks, we call it noveach. Whoa, 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 hamenabeach. And in the last word, the term admon is referred to red. And there are a couple of theories. One is understood by some to refer to the Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, which means red-bearded, right? But the last stanza is generally believed to have been composed around turn of the 16th century. So there's a big debate about the different ways, the way it was. I will talk about the word Edom in a minute when I discuss with you and for you the origin, the interpretation of the psalm itself. So you have here the translation, And just look at the first verse. Sorry, here. No. Okay. So, Tikon Beit Tefilati, let our house prayer be restored. Le'et tachin matbeach, and there will be offered to you thanks when you will have slaughtered the barking foe, mitzar hamenabeach. As Egmor, then I will celebrate with the song of psalms, the altar's dedication. So this is the beginning, a hope for redemption of the building of Beit HaMikdash. Now the second one, Ra'ot. My soul was sated with misery. Ra'ot sav'a nafshi, beyagon kochi, when I lost my power. Chayai mereru bekoshi, they embittered my life with hardship. Who? But look at the last 3-4 lines in English. While Pharaoh hosts and followers sank their stone into the sea. Uveyado hagdula, and God with his big hand, hotzi et hasgula. Sgula is the chosen people. Cheil Paro, the army of Pharaoh, and his soldiers went like stones into the sea. This is a really beautiful interpretation. Now the third verse is talking about Zerubbabel. Look at the third line. The oppressor named and exiled me because I served strange gods. This is why the first temple was destroyed. Uvanoges vehiglani, when the Babylonians fell and Nebuchadnezzar took charge, within 70 years I was saved. Leket shiv'im, at the very end of it, leket shiv'im. You see, the leket shiv'im, and it says here, 70 years I was saved. Now the next one, of course, is look at the second line. The Agagite, the son of Hamdata, plotted to cut out the lofty fir, right? Bikesh ha'agagi. And the very end of it, Rosh Yemini Niseita, you raised the head of the Benjaminite, Binyamin, of my right hand, which was Benjamin, because Mordechai was descended of the tribe of Benjamin. But the enemy saying, you blotted out. And the very last few words, his household you hanged upon the gallows. You'll hear later interpretation the way it was sung in the early 20th century. Rov banav v'kinyanav al ha'etz talita, on the tree you hung. Now comes Hanukkah. Yevanim nikbetzu alai. Most people sing only the first verse. More traditional observant people will sing the first and the last one. I don't know if any of my friends, unless my Hasidim family in Jerusalem, will sing the whole verses, but Yevanim nikbetzu alai. When the Greek gathered against me, the Hasmonaim, Vetim'u hashmanim, and they defeated all the oil, and miracle was wrought to the Jews. Naasa nes la shoshanim. Shoshanim are the Jews. Shoshanim are roses, of course. B'nai Vina, therefore the sages, B'nai Vina, B'nai, the sons of Bina, of knowledge, who are the sages, of the day ordained these 8 days songs of praise. So here it is also, and the only one that refers to Hanukkah, the Tzur. And of course the last one is again hope for redemption. And if you see at the very, find the word, the Edomite, no, I don't see. Deche Admon betzent Salmon, reject the enemy into the shadows of idolatry, and set up for us the 7th sphere. Admon is very similar to the word of Adom. Now, we had 4 exiles: Egypt, Babylonia, Greek, and Rome. And to this day, the Roman Empire exile is still, in some Jewish philosophy, still the exile of Edom. Edom is also referred to Esau. Esau was a red-headed, and of course Esau was also Eretz Edom, an Edomite. And so this is basically the interpretation of the song itself. Of course, here you hear the transliteration, and now let's begin to listen to the versions of Maoz Tzur. This is the synagogue in Hanover, Germany, which was the biggest house of worship in Lower Saxony and Germany altogether, where my uncle, Israel Alter, was the cantor there from 1925 to 1935. This was recorded in 1926 with an opera chorus. This is only the first verse, and I will talk a little bit about this house of worship and what it meant and how these records were saved, and I was able to refurbish them into incredible CDs. But let's go to the melody of it. So, before we go into the actual, you can read it yourself here, but I just want to tell you about Edward Birnbaum lived between 1855 and 1920. He studied synagogue music for 3 years in Vienna with Solomon Sulzer, who I said was the father of the modern cantorate. In 1872, he was appointed deputy cantor of the community of Magdeburg, and so on and so forth. And he also wrote a book called Baal Tfilah, the collection of 1,500 Jewish ritual melodies and recitative for cantor by cantor Abraham Beer. It was published in 1877. His collection is now hosted and rests in the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, and there are over 7,000 cards of his manuscripts and the collection, the original ones that he left and collected. And he was a very famous teacher in Cincinnati, and actually he died in Königsberg. He went back to Germany. One of his beautiful books was published in the late 19th century. It's called The Jüdische Kantor, the Jewish Cantor. His writings were acquired by Birnbaum collection, as I said, by the Hebrew Union College. So, look what it says. Maoz Tzur is a melody rooted in German folk song. And it speaks, so weiß ich ein das, thus I know, that which makes me happy. And of course, the same melody was later adapted by Luther, Martin Luther, the choral. Nun freut euch, lieben Christian. Therefore rejoice, O beloved Christian fellows. The melody was well known among Jews as early as 1450, at the time of Baruch Bandit, created another Hanukkah anthem and wrote that it should be sung to that melody of Maoz Tzur. The melody was also used for the Piyut Shnei Zeitim, which I will talk to you in a minute, which is recited by Ashkenazic Jews in Germany at the time between on Shabbat Hanukkah. It was believed that it was written by Samuel Even Gabirol at 1021 to 1070, and it was not clear which poem was first one to use that melody. The melody was first published by John Bram and Isaac Nathan in a Hebrew Melodies in London in 1850. But look at this, the Luther hymn. Nun freut euch, liebe Christian guys. Und I can't read the German there, but it doesn't go da da da, but it goes da 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 da. So he adapted the melody of very similar melody to Maoz Tzur. It was his Christian hymn. Solomon Lieben is again another incredible collector, and in his manuscripts we find this version. Maoz Tzur Yeshuati lechana leshabeach תיקון בית תפילתי, ושם תודה נזבח, לעת הכין מטבח, מיצר המנבח, אז אגמור אז אגמור בשיר מזמור, חנוכת המזבח, חנוכת המזבח. It's another notation of Maoz Tzur. Then we have another one. Again, the Baal Ber Tfilah that I told you before about this entire liturgical from Mod De'ani and Isidur to the end of Ne'ilah. This Avraham Ber notated in this incredible volume Maoz Tzur, which is basically the way we sing it now. Edelson, again the very famous musicologist, which I talked to you before, in 1929, published this, Maoz Tzur Yeshuati lechana el shabeach, לתכין מטבח, מצר המנבח, אז אגמור, it's not אז אגמור, but אז אגמור בשיר מזמור, חנוכת המזבח. So these notations are real quotations of what these musicologists and researchers found out. They just didn't make it up. Now, I told you there was a very beautiful piyut that was written in the 11th century. A Hanukkah piyut by Ibn Gibirol was written as the Leir and the members of the Ashkenazi congregation used to say it in the morning prayer for Shabbat Hanukkah. It is a debate if it was done before the Amidah or before the Shema, before the blessing, the creator of the Leir. It is interesting that this piyut was absorbed and preserved exclusively in the Ashkenazi community in France and Germany, and is not found in any other communities. And again, the manuscript is very, very unclear, so I will show you the original text here, and here's the text. Of course, I cannot sing it, but I will go back to show you the similarity to the Maoz Tzur. Shnei zeitim, ta-da-da-da-da-di-da-da, di-da-da, di-da-da, di-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-di-da-da-da-da-da-di-da-di-da. Da 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 na 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 na. I wish I can find a translation and also have the incredible words of this piyut sung to this melody. But you see how similar it is to Maoz Tzur. But about the Maoz Tzur, we'll talk a little bit more, because before we go to our own days of Maoz Tzur, I want to talk to you and present you with something very, very interesting, and some of you may know. Benedetto Marcello, not a Jewish guy, was born in 1686 in Venice and died in 1739. He was a composer. He was also a politician, because his father wanted him to be a politician, but he chose music. An Italian composer and writer, and remembered for one of his great work, his magnum opus, Estro Poetico Armonico, a poetic, romantic inspiration, work that happened to be a particular interest to study of history of Jewish music. Musicologists like Birnbaum, Edelson, and Eric Werner, who was also my teacher at the HUC, wrote studies about his work. Marcello worked consistently on 4 volumes. He wanted to write Jewish music to Jewish music motif to the first 50 psalms of the book of Psalms, which are not a direct quotation but paraphrases, and I will talk about it later. But it is absolutely known that in, let me get that right page here, 270 years ago, no, let me first let you hear it. This is one version, but now I want to give you this particular version and talk a little bit about it, because this is the Zamir of Boston, and you see in the top the notation. This is the way that Benedetto Marcello notated it. So the oldest printed melody of the Maoz Tzur was notated by the Italian composer Benedetto Marcello. The story of an Italian church musician came to publish music, synagogue music, melody, because of his interest on Hanukkah about 270 years ago. Marcello actually crossed from the Christian Venice into the Jewish ghetto, heading for the great Ashkenazic synagogue, famed for its beautiful music. Marcello is a successful lawyer and politician, as I said before, was also a composer of church music, about to begin his Ernesto Poetico Armonico, as I told you, a collection of psalms, and it is known, and I have here a place that explains it actually, that on the 9th, on the 9th Psalm, Psalm number 9, where he paraphrases, he opens with a Sephardic intonation, because he also went to the Sephardic synagogue and took 11 melodies that he heard from both synagogues. In a minute I will tell you about it, because I will show you the manuscripts. But he wrote his melodies exactly the way he heard it and wove it into his composition. And when he wrote the music, he wrote it in the Gregorian chant, and you hear Ma'osu Yeshuati Lecha Nahe. Of course, it has to be a scholar to be able to translate it to you today. So this Just Jacobson, the conductor of the Zamir Boston, which I've sang many times with, notated it and made an arrangement of it. And the arrangement that you saw before, my choir also sings it. My Lachan choir sang it in Europe a few times. In fact, we sang it in China, I think, as well. But here's the beautiful version of Benedet Marcello, sung by the Zamir of Boston. It's the same melody, but with the sixth verse of Yevanim Nikbetzu Alai. I want to go a little faster because I have other surprises for you, but you just should see that he actually notated many other compositions, Betzet Israel Mitzrayim, and he wrote it again. This is already more modern notation, but the way he wrote it to begin with, in the Renaissance period, he wrote it with right to left and the Hebrew underneath. Betzet Israel mitzrayim bet Yaakov me'am lo'ez hayta Yehuda. Today we sing Betzet Israel. Okay, then another one, Lecha Dodi and Hamavdil, all authentic melodies that he took from the Ashkenazic and the Sephardic synagogue and innovated them in his romantic episode of 50 Psalms. And here I have another version of it, but I'll skip it because I want to go now to the actual modern Maoz Tzur. And so I will talk in a minute about this person here, Leib Glantz, who really despised the fact that we all sing this for many centuries. So in Davar, which is an Israeli newspaper, he wrote Davar HaShavua, 1955, he writes the sin against Maoz Tzur. On Hanukkah, we reminded once more that our eternal spiritual war, but this is not an extender war, but an inner spiritual purification. A war against the Avodah Zarah, of idol worship, within ourselves. When we hear Hebrew songs, we feel sometimes like Cossacks and Gypsies and Walachian. In other words, he writes much more about it later. He also lectured many times at the Cantor's Assembly. Here's a well-known melody for Hanukkah, anthem Maoz Tzur, and ask what is the nature of it. As it's known, it is combined of 3 German songs, 2 German church music from the 15th century, and 1 German folk song from the 16th century. And then he talks about it later, which I'll tell you. The Christian, of course, the intelligentsia, was surely scorned us for adopting their heritage to glorify our melody of the day. On the other hand, the outwardly anti-Semites were surely angry on this blatant plagiarism of ours, and we continue to do our own thing, sinning therefore against the source of Israel. So I want you to, in a way, it doesn't matter because it became, Jews always adopted the cultures around them. And this is actually Israel Alter, my uncle, who sang it with the melody that you heard before. But I want to go to the verses in between. Now, I thought that he composed it, but a person in Amsterdam just told me 2 days ago, because in a minute I'll show you the same version sung in our days in Amsterdam. But this is the way that Israel Alter sang it in 1926. This was written in 1915, but this Israel Alter was a Chassid from Lemberg, an East European Jew who came to Hanover and adopted the most incredible singing. It's a virtuoso, incredible Wagnerian tenor voice. But look at the end. I want for you to see this one. In other words, I'm just saving time to not listen to all of this together. But on the last verse, when he talks about hanging the 10 sons and Haman in his household, look what he does there. I want you to remember this da-da-da. In a minute you'll hear, but I want to show you what this synagogue looked like. So this, in the museum in Hanover, this is the model of the synagogue, and this is what was left of it after Kristallnacht. And this is today the monument of this synagogue. You see the crack here? It says 1938, and here it says 1857. But this I found only a couple of weeks ago, that for every year they're doing this concert with this version in Amsterdam with a beautiful symphony orchestra and a soloist which you will Now he sings like Paharo, the soldiers of Pharaoh, Yadu. English first. My uncle would have killed him today to do this thing, but anyway, it's unbelievable. It is actually, in the beginning of the Mao's Tzur, it is a triumphant poem, and like the Akdamut, and like some other beautiful liturgical poems that describes the glory of what what God created in the world, and also the acculturation of the Jew to the culture where they lived. But here we go to Leib Glanz. Now this house of Leib Glanz is about 4 houses from where I lived, because I was very close to Leib Glanz, the greatest ever cantor existed. I can even give you a lecture about his incredible composition and contribution to Jewish music. But he was such a purist that he just couldn't take the not Jewish nature of this song. So here's what he writes. The Glanz article continues. Of course, it's much easier than to read it from the page that I have it here, but he also adds another version, another explanation to another influence of the song. In my opinion, we need to create a melody for Mao's Tzur, which will be built on the original and traditional nusach of Hanukkah. I offer to the general public and the children that are of the shop. In the second paragraph, it said the rhythmic and the melodic structure of the typical of the festival of Hanukkah, and that certain notations start not imitation of strange cultures. Let us endeavor to that. Then he writes, and for that reason I wrote my own composition, which is nusach according to the Jewish modes of tefillah, of the prayer. And actually, I heard it when I was 10 years old, when he sang it in the synagogue, and later on it was published. So here is his version of Mao's Tzur. I don't see. I can't see the. I don't understand why it disappeared. Here it is. Sorry. Of course, it is not a song that has been sung by families around the Hanukkah candle blessing, but it is an interpretation of the way Maoz Tzur should be. He came to Israel after many years where he could not get a job in Israel because he was a religious Jew, but he was a Mapainik, he was a Ben Gurion. So all the synagogues were controlled by the Mizrahi, by the religious party, and so he couldn't get a job in Israel. But in 1954, he came to Israel and served for 10 years. Incredible. This was a synagogue, which is, again, I used to go every Shabbat, and it was an unbelievable experience. The first slichot that he did in 54, I was 10 years old, lasted from 12 o'clock at night till 3 in the morning. And there were 5,000 people outside on the streets with police on horse, making sure that that there's order there. He was such a popular and well-known Chazan. Okay, now a little bit of entertainment. Naomi Shemer wrote a beautiful song called Shivchi Ma'oz. Shivchi Ma'oz. And I gave you here, of course, a little bit Naomi Shemer. Everybody knows Naomi Shemer. She was the Jerusalem of mine. But here is the song, Shivchi Ma'oz. And I just found out the song refers to Shemer's visit to the fortified Bar Lev line in the Gaza Strip during Hanukkah, when the soldiers improvised candle holders from rocket shell casing. And here is the song. Nothing to do with Hanukkah, but look to the translation.
מעוז צור ישועתי, לך נאה לשבח. הרחק, הרחק ליד ביתי, הפרדסים נתנו ריח. אבוא במנהרות ובמצדות ובמערות.
Okay. This is a better version because you'll see the words in English under the, it's an army troop that's singing it.
מעוז צור ישועתי, לך נאה לשבח. הרחק, הרחק ליד ביתי, הפרדסים נתנו ריח. אבוא במנהרות ובמצדות ובמערות, ובנקרות צורים ובמחילות הפר, אשם בלב הלילה דרוך בחרישי, צופה בי מבקש נפשי. לב הלילה דרוך בחרישי, צופה בי מבקש נפשי.
Of course, that was before the Yom Kippur. I want to just show you again a little version of Maoz Tzur, sung by this incredible Moshe Oisher. Read a little bit about who he was, and there was really nobody else like him. He was in very many movies in the early part of the century. Because these are interpretations of the last verses, not that we sing, but the inner verses which have nothing to do with the Hanukkah and the candle lighting, but listen to the way he finishes it. He has an unbelievable voice. Now, I know it's over the hour and 15 minutes, but you would love this. This is actually was done in Canadian Jewish News. I was writing about it, and I found it on YouTube. It is Maoz Tzur, according to Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, Brahms, Mahler, Mussorgsky, and Mark Lavery, an Israeli composer. So, just bear with me. I will not play the whole thing. It's 9 minutes, but I will find the places where I want you to hear.
ועתה לפנינו וריאציות מאת צבי וייגל על שיר החנוכה מעוז צור. הווריאציות הן בנוסח המלחינים יוהאן סבסטיאן באך, וולפגנג עמדאוס מוצרט, לודוויג ון בטהובן, יוהנס ברמס, גוסטב מאלר, מוסורסקי ומרק לברי. מנגנת תזמורת הבידור של כל ישראל עם המנצח משה עצמון. וריאציות על מעוז צור מאת צבי וייגל.
Listen to the style of the composer and the innovation of the Maoz Tzur as the themes between the things. The next one is really adorable. Israeli composer, of course. And now we come home, and I will finish like a yakib exactly before an hour and a half. I hope I didn't bore you. The only thing different about me is the beard. It was a COVID beard, but the sweater was the same and the kippah is the same.
Wow, Benny, that was really an unbelievable presentation, not just the content. You know, when we had put this out to all the congregations and we said that you're going to talk about the evolution and the tradition of the Hanukkah candle blessings, I just couldn't imagine that it was going to contain all of that information and what you taught us about Tzur. So not just the content, but what you did to put this presentation together. I mean, how fortunate are we all to have taken part in this, that you did for all of us out of the goodness of your heart. I don't have any words to thank you. I want to just suggest to all of us here that just in light of this beautiful presentation that we were really gifted because of Benny, if you would consider giving a donation to your shuls, your own shul, and just if we can all benefit that way from from this wonderful presentation. So kol kavod, thank you so very much. We're going to open it up for any questions. Thank you.
Before you continue, I just want to tell you, everybody, that I'm so flattered that so many of you came. I did it last week actually, for my no congregation, but my high holiday congregation in Hamilton, Beth Jacob, and I'm doing it here now. I've created at least 6 or 7 different PowerPoints of different subject of Jewish music, and I'm willing to travel by Zoom or by person whenever it's possible, because I finally retired and do what I want, when I want, if I want.
That's wonderful. We'll take any, Benny said he would do a little question and answer period if anybody would like to ask any questions.
Can we watch it again somewhere?
It is recorded, I think. Is that right? I think possibly. Yes, Steve, if you want to get in touch with me or Shalom, just even if you look on our website for the our I mean, I can give it to you. I can give you our email address. We can, or maybe Doug, if you can just type it in the chat, and you can speak to Jody, our administrator, about getting the recording if that's possible.
The only one I would ask only that if you use it for your own families or friends or whatever, or synagogue, fine, but do not please put it on Facebook. It's not perfect. As much as you liked it and everything, but I just want to have it privately, so you can have it, of course, but don't put it on Facebook.
We just missed the first part, and we want to see it. It was very, very, very good, what we saw.
Glad you enjoyed it.
The email address is in the chat group. If you wanted to copy it, then you can email the administration.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no questions. Everything was either totally understood or not.
No, it was wonderful. I think we're just all awed by what you did.
I could ask one question here. Benny, can you hear me?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So you were showing all those different versions of Mao Tzur, the different Hassans. Were they making them up, or were they basing it on anything? Are they just singing what they like better? All those different versions of the original melodies of Mao Tzur.
First of all, I don't. If you can talk to the camera, I don't know. I can't.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it's just my camera's on the side. I was just wondering about all the different. Can you hear me better now? No, I don't know. Anyway, all the different versions of Mao Tzur that you were showing us, the variety in them, and did they make it up because they liked it better than what they knew, or what was the basis of all the different people singing it in different ways?
Well, the Mao Tzur is the Mao Tzur. As I said, it's based upon 3 folk songs and German background. But the version that I played here, there's many more out there. One version I didn't play at the very end because we ran out of time is like a gospel singer who sings it like Jackie Richardson would sing it, like, Mao Tzur, yes, but the melody is there. The first one I just liked because it was beautiful harmony to the thing, and of course the one in Germany in 1926, when my uncle recorded it with the opera chorus, was an original version, and that's the way, probably that's the closest to the original, because it was recorded in 1926, and it was the German, the Yakkers, they do it the right way. And they didn't deviate with anything, and I thought that the middle part where he sang the different verses was his composition, because he composed a lot. Israelter is known to be a great composer also of liturgical and religious music, but it was written probably according to this person that you saw the concert in Amsterdam. It was written in 1915, so in 26. This incredible Wagnerian voice, he was 24 years old. Can you believe that was 24 years old?
I can ask the second last slide that you had. that had all the different classicals on it. Is that available just by itself?
Yes, of course. You just look on YouTube. You said Jerusalem Symphony variation of Mao's Tzur. It's really incredible. I just played little segment and I rushed through the places where they but it's really incredible. And the first before Bach is the arranger, evidently. Moshe Atzmon is an incredible Israeli conductor who lives in France, and I sang with him in Hanover in Germany, where he conducted the Resurrection Symphony, Brahms. Mahler's, of course. Incredible arranger and conductor.
And on YouTube, I would look at where, I'm sorry?
I don't remember exactly where it is.
Israel Symphony?
No, the Jerusalem Symphony, variation of Mao's Tzur.
Thank you, sir.
I think everybody just wants to listen to you keep talking, Benny. I don't think anybody has any questions. We just want to just kind of sit here all night and just listen to you.
Listen, I did for Audrey Synagogue. I have a very, if you're interested, anybody is interested in the real cantorial golden age, I call it When Cantors Ruled the Earth. The history of the golden age of Chazanut, which is really incredible, and also the end of it is how my generation received it from the older generation. And in fact, I compare a phrase of one of the great cantors singing, and then I sing it not the same way, but similar to. Anyway, it's a whole lecture by itself, which I've done a few times already.
Well, a lot of the attendees here this evening did attend that brief introduction on Cantors Rule the Earth, and that's why they're all here again. But now that you've kind of let the cat out of the bag and said that you have that great presentation, we would love you to do that. What can I say? We always said that we would continue that, and we never did. So I think I've got to contact you again, and we have to continue our Cantors Rule the Earth.
My pleasure.
Well, we're so fortunate to have you in our midst to teach us all this, and we love it. You know, it's really a real treat that you brought all these congregations together like this for this wonderful Hanukkah program.
Well, I hope that we all have light, health, and when I retired, which was my choice, I was planning to start to travel in the world. I'm also teaching at the Geiger College in Berlin, the Cantorial Rabbinical College, which is now in Potsdam, part of the University of Potsdam. And of course, because of COVID, I had to do it on Zoom, like master classes. And I'm dying to go to Israel to see my family, but Israel now also has the new variant, unfortunately. And Ontario has 7 of them now. So, but just keep wearing masks and be careful and be safe.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Maybe Benny, just stay on for a minute afterwards, and I'll talk with you. But thank you all so much. Chag Hanukkah Sameach. Can somebody please call me and remind me how many candles to light tomorrow evening, just so I light the. Oh, thanks, Doug. Okay, that'd be great. But we're all mishpacha, so it's okay. A little faux pas with family. What does it matter? Anyway, really, it's wonderful to see you all. I don't want to say goodnight. I've been in touch with a lot of you in preparation of this, and I'm going to say it's not the end. We're going to continue this. This is just a wonderful thing we have going here. And thank you for your response. Thank you for the support. And I love how we're all connected like this. It's just terrific. So, Chag Urim Sameach. Have a wonderful Hanukkah. Keep well. And we'll see you again hopefully soon.
All the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is wonderful.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Very much. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much. I love the variations.
Wonderful.